Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody. It is it's a little bit of a cool day. It was about 70 degrees yesterday in your nation's capital in February, which is really unheard of. Today, a little chilly, some threats of snow, but so far we're cozy here in the southern DMZ, but we've not gotten snowed on.
Did Jim Inhofe throw any snowballs in the Senate yesterday?
Did he do that before? Is that sounds vaguely
He always
familiar.
says like there's always whenever it snows in winter, you always hear on the right, "Aha! There's no global warming. It still snows. This proves it."
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I think both sides will use weather as evidence of whichever side they're trying to push. But I'm a believer in you put that snowball in the freezer for a year, and then you break it out at the right time, and that's when you do some damage. So
That was an old Bill Cosby bit.
is that where I stole that from? I knew there was some comedian.
Junior Barnes pulled out a slush ball, and Bill Cosby retaliated by getting a snowball in the freezer. Got him in the summer.
People forget how some of these older comedians, and we'll put aside the controversies about Bill Cosby, but I was listening a couple years ago. Mark Maron had Bob Newhart on, and I had no idea. Bob Newhart at one point had the two. I think you know this world better than I do.
I know my Bob Newhart.
We might have talked about this before, but he had like the number one and the number two record in America at one point, which is unbelievable. I'm talking about, this isn't just the comedy charts. This is like in the, whatever. This is like in the world. It's amazing.
I gotta say, I have the old Bob Newhart records, which I don't really hold up as well. I mean that some of that 1950s comedy is a little dated.
Didn't he do like one skit where it was like a public relations person advising Abraham Lincoln like how to communicate?
Well, his standard bit was doing these sort of one-sided phone calls. Which is a nice setup, but some of the lines might feel a little musty. And as horrible as what Bill Cosby has done that we know now, there are a lot of great artists who have had horrific personal lives. James Brown did horrible things too in his relationships, but we don't shelve all of his records. I think there are aspects to Bill Cosby's comedy which are culturally relevant. I think there is an advancement in the art of comedy that he did that is separate from his criminal behavior. And
what I think is amazing too is these guys have they almost all have like one iconic. Like Eddie Murphy might have a couple, Richard Pryor might have a couple, but like I'm thinking like there's the Robin Williams in front of the stagecoach at the Metropolitan Opera House that you always remember. There's the one where Bill Cosby's like I think he always was seated, but he had in the 80s a comedy routine of him that was very like family friendly, as I recall.
Yeah.
Of him sort of just sitting down talking. And it seems like these guys, there's always like that one comedy routine that they have that becomes like iconic.
I agree, and I think when I think of what's iconic about Bob Newhart, I don't think it's those old comedy albums. I think it's the show Newhart, which even more so than the Bob Newhart show. That when he's in the Vermont, when he's managing the Vermont Inn. I mean, the way that show ended is TV history that should never be forgotten.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I'm guessing most of our viewers know because.
Let's not do a spoiler alert for those who don't know. The kids out there might not have seen it.
Well, it's 25 years old, so I don't know. But they did. It was a very smart and clever way of ending Newhart. We could say that. All right. Well, although I know we have done some research on our viewers. About 20% of them come to us for our comedy commentary, but more of them are probably into the politics. So I suppose we should probably. Well, before I do that, though, I told you about how Southern DMZ is. I suspect, Bill, you have real snowballs.
We're going to get probably a foot today here in Northern DMZ. Snowballs. And this is my second snow day of the week, and I work out of the house, so a snow day is particularly trying for me. I honestly don't even know. I've never been in a situation where I was working in an office while I had kids. When my office time was before I had kids, and if both of us worked, and I guess we both worked, and we had. Let me think about it. If both of us worked and both our kids are in school, having to find the childcare every time there was a snow day. I don't know quite what I would do. I mean, obviously people.
It's incredibly hard because you don't. By definition, it's not like you're paying someone every day. This is like a once in a while thing. So how do you keep somebody on retainer to be available in the event that there could be a snowstorm? Or it sucks. It's just, it's hard for parents. And I will tell you this, Bill, as someone who did work in an office for about 6 years, if you want to call it an office, it was sort of half frat house, half office. But I had an office to go to. And as someone who did that, I literally, no exaggeration, would go to work on Mondays to rest up, to get rest from the weekend. And not because I was partying. I would go to get rest from my kid. Like, that's where I would go, like, damn, glad it's Monday. All right. Go to the office and get some rest.
But in Trump's America, there's never any rest. There's never any.
Not for reporters and writers. Bill, I wrote a piece last week for the Daily Beast. So first of all, Trump messed up my whole week, right? So I was supposed to go to New York Monday and Tuesday and do TV for CNN Monday night and Tuesday night. But of course, the Gorsuch announcement happens Tuesday night. It scuttles all my plans because he moves it from it's supposed to be Thursday, and he moves it to Tuesday. So then I write a piece Wednesday that goes up Thursday about Gorsuch. And the argument I'm making is that this is why a lot of conservatives voted for Trump, number one, because we fetishize these Supreme Court picks in a way that maybe even transcends their actual importance, even though we all know that these lifetime appointments are important. To conservatives, they take on like a legendary importance. And I wrote a piece about that went up Thursday that got, you and I might have clicked on it. I don't think it got a ton of traction. And I think it's because it was too late. Literally, I think that any other week, any other time in my life, that would have been the story of the week. Trump picks Gorsuch as the Supreme Court justice. That would have been the lead story on Meet the Press and This Week and Fox News Sunday. By the time Sunday rolled around, it was like an afterthought. It was like the fifth story that they were talking about. It's hard to keep up with this.
Well, I mean, and that's because there's been so much leaking from the White House about Trump's strange behavior that it just overwhelms the system. And of course, Trump can't avoid a fight. And so whenever there's any kind of pot shot at him, he fires back. There's all the stuff about Sean Spicer, the stuff about the travel ban. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So we talked last week. Your manometer was twitching around Reagan.
Thank you to the person who created some graphics, some images. I was
I need to pull it together and make it into an actual poster board thing.
Yeah, and just you can expense that to corporate. No, I was originally afraid that someone had sent us a virus because it was in some sort of box document that I'm unfamiliar with. But whoever did that would have had to have been a pretty good DMZ fan to watch the show thoroughly to figure out what the manometer was. I did see
Gorsuch put you up at Reagan.
Yeah.
Where after all you've seen about his the calls with world leaders and his attacking of the judge on the travel ban, I'm sure I'm missing 5 other crazy things he's done in the past week.
Right.
Where are you resting right now?
Well, so once again, I'll say that this is a product of timing. We were in Jimmy Carter territory a couple of days ago. It would have been, if we had taped this like 2 or 3 days ago, then it would have been much worse. I feel like there's been a rebound. He's been quiet lately. There's always stuff. I mean, as we tape this today,
he was attacking John McCain this morning. Because McCain had the temerity to question how well his Yemen military mission went.
Yeah, that's right. And then I saw Kellyanne Conway was telling people to shop for Ivanka clothes because I guess yesterday Trump attacked Nordstrom's.
Right.
Nordstrom's.
I
do a lot of shopping. Let me just say, I do a ton of shopping at Nordstrom's. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know.
You don't buy the Ivanka brand for anything?
Have not got that. I get a lot. I bet you that this like dress shirt I'm wearing, I could almost guarantee you came from Nordstrom. Nordstrom's. Whatever it is, I am a fan.
So you are defying your dear leader's words and are going to continue to shop at Nordstrom? Have you crossed over and joined the resistance?
Not yet. I will not be moved. Speaking of the resistance, what do you? Michael Tomasky, my colleague at the Daily Beast, is looking for a name of the resistance.
Wolverines.
Is that where we are?
Wolverines.
That's what you like, right? You like Wolverines.
That's what I like. Yeah,
I like it because wasn't that Tom Brady's college team in Michigan?
No. I'm taking that from Red Dawn.
Well, I just thought there was a Tom Brady tie-in, but Red Dawn is good too. I haven't seen it in years. I certainly have not seen the remake. But
I'm not talking about the remake. No, the original Red Dawn, Wolverines, Patrick Swayze.
Have you talked to Mr. Tomasky about this, or do I need to pass this on?
I think I tweeted him. I don't know if he noticed, but I do think I think people are just using the resistance the way they use the Tea Party. I think it's kind of baked in the cake at this point.
Yeah.
It came up organically. You can use it in all sorts of ways. It's a very I think malleable word, and it's good for headline writing. It's good for rhymes. Now you have the nevertheless she persisted coming out of Mitch McConnell's mouth that you can now have we resist, we persist. It just has a lot of uses.
I like the Wolverine thing. It's a better mascot. I think there could be there could be buttons and imagery.
Hey, if I was the marketer from the beginning, that's what I'd be doing. But I just think the train's left the station here, and I understand Tomasky's concerned that sounds a little too Marxist to have Middle America appeal. But look, the Tea Party was something that had terrible poll numbers for a very long time, and in fact, really wasn't really being used in the Trump campaign as a thing anymore. But
isn't this like Puma? Isn't Wolverine like a puma? Like the party unity, my ass. Like, isn't that the Puma was an animal too, right?
Well, animal mascots are just they're good marketing things in general. That's why every minor league baseball team has an animal name. My close team to me just changed from the Rock Cats to the Yard Goats.
Yeah.
So they could sell lots of goat merchandise.
Well, and I love me some minor league sports. It's more fun often. Let me. I told people I wish I had it here. I'm reading this book called The Fourth Turning. Have you? It's been written about other places. I think Huffington Post most recently. But there's this book called The Fourth Turning that apparently Steve Bannon is a big fan of. And it was written, the crazy thing is it was written in 1997. And I can't tell if it's like, when you go to a fortune teller, I've never been to a fortune teller, but I did read a book about con artists. And when you go to fortune tellers, they'll say things like, in the last 10 years, you've suffered a tragedy. Or there's someone named Michael who's very important to you. They'll say things like that, and you're like, oh my, this must be true, So I'm always cautious about reading things, but I tell you, there's some stuff in this book. Strauss and Howe are the two authors. And this is apparently like Steve Bannon's Bible, or one of his favorite books. There's some stuff in this book about the fourth turning, which we're now in, according to the book, that is eerie. I tweeted some of it out, but one of them that you just reminded me of is actually in the book. They mention this is written in 1997, and they mention the Tea Party. That part of the fourth turning, that there could be an economic crisis or a housing downturn, that would precipitate this. And it's hard to predict. I'm paraphrasing it, but it's hard to predict how it might manifest. It could be something as trivial as a Tea Party, and they go into some other examples of how it might manifest. But the Tea Party thing freaked me out. Now let me just go on the record here. I've been saying on this show for years, I thought the Tea Party was a bad image. It's old, and it's not cool. And, the idea of wearing tri-cornered hats and, harkening back to something that old, I feel like the Wolverine is a cooler image, graphic. So I'm kind of with you on this.
I appreciate that. Well, I want to get back to stuff that you've written recently, and what happened this week with Elizabeth Warren on the floor of the Senate, where she was silenced by Mitch McConnell for violating the Senate rule on imputing other senators' motives when she was trying to read a letter from Coretta Scott King written 30 years ago about Jeff Sessions. And it seemed to be an odd application of the rule. I mean, that rule is there so you have civil debates around legislation. You weren't debating legislation. You weren't debating legislation. You're debating Jeff Sessions' nomination to be Attorney General. So how can you discuss his nomination if you can't bring up anything negative about him? And the way McConnell did it was sort of classically condescending. He then said, she was warned, and nevertheless she persisted. That struck a massive nerve on the left and with women in general, and that just seemed to redouble the desire to resist Trump in all forms on the left. You wrote, I think before this incident, a cautionary message to the left to be careful how they resist and not emulate the Tea Party all the way down the line. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. And first let me say, specifically to the Mitch McConnell invoking of Rule 19, I am inclined to agree with our good friend James Hohmann over at the Washington Post. I don't know if you saw what he wrote in his daily email, but he argues that McConnell is playing a long game, that Mitch McConnell, to paraphrase Marco Rubio, knows exactly what he's doing, and that he is trying to elevate Elizabeth Warren as the face of the Democratic Party. Now, maybe that's too much three-dimensional chess, but if anybody plays it, it's Mitch McConnell. So I think that's an interesting argument. And it does feed into this.
Before we get into your piece, I want to let's talk this a little bit, because my sense is that this was a bona fide misstep by McConnell. I generally accept the image of McConnell as a soulless, bloodless political machine who does nothing without 7 layers of cold calculation. So I don't jump to the conclusion that he makes mistakes. I do think it's wise to treat his actions as very deliberate. But I don't. But this was a literal spur of the moment kind of situation. And it does. The logic doesn't follow to me that there's some great game plan to elevate Warren as the face of the party. Why is that bad? Warren's not a grotesque face to give to the left. She's a pretty sharp cookie. So I don't think she has a reputation of being. I realize there's a caricature on the right that she's some sort of far left troglodyte, but that's not the general impression of Warren to the extent that the average American even has one. And it's not like if she's elevated that she has these horrible left-wing impulses that will horrify the average American. I don't think that's the case with her. I mean, there's other folks you might do that with on the left, but she's not really one of them. And so I don't think that is that doesn't add up to me. Now I might be more inclined to think that there is this reflexive attitude on the right that being called a racist by the left is abhorrent political correctness, and that gets the dander up of many in the white working class that helped fuel Trump, and so to stir that culture war pot serves Republican interest, even if it's not a majority view in the country. If you can maintain the hard 46% for Trump in the states that matter, that's good enough. And this is a way to kind of keep that cycle of grievance going. I would buy that a little more. But even still, I think the way McConnell handled it was, I think, unleash more than he was bargaining for.
Well, I would say that certainly it got more publicity than it would have had he just allowed her to read the remarks, and therefore you could argue that that was a misstep by McConnell, or that it was him intentionally stoking that story, and it's sort of unknowable.
Of course,
whether we attribute to him a sort of a Machiavellian prescience or just a misstep. And I guess there's also another third option, which is somewhat noble, which would be a guardian of protocol and decorum in the U.S. Senate.
But this has hardly been consistently applied.
Yeah, I know that.
And this is hardly the best case to apply it because you're dealing with an individual's nomination.
So, anyway, regardless of that, I do think that we are seeing a lot of talk about a liberal Tea Party. And then I just saw a piece in Deseret News about how Jason Chaffetz is girding his loins for some protests at town halls that he is going to have.
He's still going to have them. He's not hiding under the desk.
Well, or maybe he'll go out the back door. But do you remember? I mean, this is playing out exactly like it did for Republicans right after. I guess it was in 2009. Democrats went home and were greeted by all of these protests at town hall meetings, a lot of tough questions, and by that point, cell phones. Now everyone had a cell phone with a camera, and there were things being filmed, and it really drove the narrative, the anti-Obamacare narrative that helped stoke the resistance back then. We need a cool name, the Tea Party, back then. But my point is, Bill, and I think you'd agree with this. I think that liberals, obviously the liberal base wants them to be the opposition and to be tough, and both sides, both extremes on the right and the left, really love toughness. There's this. Remember the sense that Mitch McConnell was a total wimp who just gave the Democrats everything they wanted, except he held up a Supreme Court nomination for a year. But otherwise, a complete pansy who got walked all over. And we're starting to see that happen now with Schumer, who, the funny thing is, Republicans and conservatives always thought Schumer was this brilliant, tough, hard-nosed, tough, guy. That, remember, there was a narrative on the right that Schumer was was sort of leading Marco Rubio around and outsmarting him, and that Schumer could do no wrong, and Rubio was this stupid little puppy, like being led astray by Schumer. Now the left, I think, is there's a danger of them kind of turning against him. And I guess there have been some protests or sit-ins in his offices or whatever. Anyway, both sides love action and toughness. But I think it's going to be harder for liberals to become the sort of, if they want to, the danger is that instead of being the alternative to Trump, which would be a serious, thoughtful, non-chaotic movement party, that they would follow Trump and follow the recipe of the Tea Party and Trump, and say, hey, it worked for them, let's be just as crazy as they were. I think that would be a mistake, because, again, it deprives them of the opportunity to be the alternative, the adult party. And B, because I feel like the problem is that the Democratic coalition consists of, yeah, there are some people who are radical, but there are also people who like listen to NPR and really believe in government, and they really want government to be effective and efficient. Maybe not efficient, but they want government to. They want government. They have a belief in government, that government works, and so in a way, it's off-brand for them to be a party of no, who tries to stop everything reflexively. But I've gone on and on, Bill.
Well, I think you're onto something there. I think there's a lot of potential obstacles to successful to unified resistance going forward. There's definitely suspicion of Schumer on the left, and it's actually, I mean, the Republican attitude towards Schumer when he was dealing with immigration and Rubio was sort of, Schumer's crafty. Schumer's a wily deal maker, and he's going to seduce you into a deal that's no good.
Right.
Schumer is a deal maker. I mean, and it's the deal making that's exactly what unnerves the hard left. They don't want deals. They want full resistance. So they're nervous that Schumer's gonna break and find occasional areas of common ground, and that's gonna upset them. So that's why you see protests around his office,
God forbid,
to try to prevent him from doing that. You have people who were mad yesterday that one Democrat voted for Jeff Sessions, that being Joe Manchin. Now, Joe Manchin is probably the Democratic senator in, I think, the reddest state. I haven't looked at the numbers. Maybe it's North Dakota, but West Virginia is gotta be up there, and he's up for re-election 2018. Now, he's going to have to do something that's not party line Democrat to keep his seat. I mean, I don't think he's got to vote Republican on everything. In fact, I'm actually surprised that Manchin as being as party line as he is so far. Now, I totally get that on the left, Jeff Sessions is seen as the worst kind of racist. If you're going to break ranks on something, he's the last guy you want to do it for. I get how that is a bitter pill to swallow. But you'd much rather have Joe Manchin voting with Republicans, 10% of the time, than having a Republican in that seat voting with Republicans 100% of the time. So you got to give people a little bit of latitude to, pick their spots where to break ranks. And, that level of political sophistication is not always there on the left. So you have divides, you have ideological divides between the center left and the hard left. You have political strategy divides, whether it's, do we need full resistance or do we need to be choosy when we resist and we don't resist. You have the cultural divides where some people are saying, look, we got to be economic populist to the hill, and some people are saying we can't forget about issues involving race and gender and immigration, which and all these three divides don't cut the same exact way with every constituency. Because you might be hard left economic populist, and that might behoove you to work with Trump on infrastructure or trade, and not be 100% resistance all the time. So there's a lot of plates moving around there. I mean, it was only a week ago that the left was mad at Elizabeth Warren because she voted for Ben Carson for HUD. And now, of course...
How much flack is Manchin getting over this?
I mean, I see some stuff on Twitter. I don't know if it goes that far and wide. But I mean, that's the thing. It's hard to get your arms around how obviously there's some division. Does it reach the level where we're literally talking about primary challenges? I don't know if we're at that stage yet with Manchin. And if there was a primary challenge, I doubt it would go very far.
Yeah,
it wasn't that long ago when the left engineered a primary challenge for
Republicans. A primary challenge against
the left engineered a primary challenge for Blanche Lincoln in Arkansas because she was seen as too close to Banks, and they wanted to make an example of her. And people didn't want to hear the argument that, hey guys, it's Arkansas. This is the best you're going to get in Arkansas. And if you go and bleed her during the primary, she survived the primary, and then she lost the general in a landslide. And the general attitude on the left was, she was going to lose anyway, so there was no risk on our part. Maybe, but you certainly did not bolster her ability to survive that election by beating the hell out of her and calling her a tool of Wall Street in the primary. If the best resistance is going to be to have a good midterm, and some thought is going to need to go into how to have a good midterm.
Well, that'll be a very interesting one to watch. Manchin is in a state, because I know a little bit about West Virginia. Manchin is in a state that is incredibly pro-Trump. People have been saying, West Virginia's been getting more and more red, but it's more Trump than it is George W. Bush. I mean, it's a great Trump state. There are 2 or 3 Republicans who are now potentially could run against him and could run serious campaigns, not laughable but serious professional campaigns against Manchin. Manchin's voting record and things he has done over the years make him vulnerable. But you know what? I will say this. He feels like he fits the district. He was a governor of West Virginia before he was a senator. His manner, it's sort of like, who's the Sherrod Brown in Ohio, right? They both kept that folksy way about them. They did not go Washington or Hollywood or whatever in their temperament. And I think that goes a long way. That will be a very interesting Senate race to watch, which will be here before we know it.
There are definitely times where I feel some out-of-the-box thinking from the left has value, that people inside the Beltway might have a constrained set of political strategical thinking. I'll vote Republican, 20% of the time, just so they can't run ads against me saying I voted with Democrats 100% of the time. And there are certain populist type things where even if you're in a red state, the left would say, look, if you are more populist, you'll be in a stronger position than if you're not populist. I mean, that was sort of the argument to Blanche Lincoln. And so I don't think that's devoid of logic, but I think you got to have a little bit of respect for a guy like Manchin, who, at minimum, you got to accept that he knows his state. He has survived in his state during a time of pretty significant political transition, and you are not going to go to Manchin and say, "Hey, I know how to win your state better than you do." He's not going to believe you. He's going to be like, "I've been governor and senator here. I think I know what I'm doing." I mean, there might be.
Yeah, I mean, if he were a hardcore liberal, and if he had if he came across as like more cosmopolitan, I think he would be in real trouble. He's still going to have a tough fight, I think, but But it's not that it's not a foregone conclusion. It's possible that Donald Trump could win, and they'll vote for a Democrat for Senate.
Well, look, Scott Brown won in Massachusetts in 2009. So pendulum swings can happen very, very quickly. I just think, to your column about the Tea Party, I think there are good lessons to draw and bad lessons to draw. Having very fervent, consistent resistance, I think, has a lot of merit to it. And there are certain lines which really are not acceptable to cross. If you had a bunch of Democrats that voted with Trump to bomb Australia, and you might say, "Hey, I don't care that you're a Democrat in a red state. If you're gonna get us into a war with Australia, you're of no use to me at all anymore." There are certain lines that would be understandable, but a vote for a nominee, whether it's Manchin voting for Sessions or Warren voting for Carson, a nominee that's getting approved no matter what. There's the total throwaway vote that has no actual changes nothing on the ground. You gotta let some of those go. If you want people to.
Well, and the thing is, I gotta tell you, Jeff Sessions could get elected Senate in West Virginia elected Robert C. Byrd for how many years? There's nothing about Jeff Sessions that is going to offend the sensibilities of West Virginia. It's like there's nothing that he allegedly did 30 years ago that is going to offend them. And the other thing too is just the regulatory stuff. This is where I think Manchin. I have to dig into his record a little bit, but the Clean Power Plan, these EPA regulations, the war on coal, that's obviously the unspoken thing in West Virginia. And if you lean on someone like Manchin and pressure him to be too liberal, too progressive on things like that, forget it. Just forget that.
You have to accept that the person who is senator from Virginia is going to be horrible on climate, no matter who it is, Democrat, Republican. That person, West Virginia, that person will be horrible on climate. They're going to suck up the coal. There's just no way around that. And once you get past that, then you say, what can I get a Democrat who is terrible on the environment but is good on some other things that is better than the Republican alternative? Well, I have to go. I have to go a little bit. I have to go soon. Not quite yet. I want to one other thing before we go.
Okay.
Which is self-promotional, of course. So I had a piece in Politico that nobody read. So here's our chance to get somebody to read it. Which was 7 cable TV news segments America wishes Trump could watch. And the piece was not 100% serious, but the nut of it is we're seeing and hearing how Trump spends his mornings and his nights obsessed with cable TV, lounging in his bathrobe, complaining about Don Lemon, venting to his aides, and then tweeting his reactions.
Great Maggie Haberman, Glenn Thrush, New York Times piece, by the way.
And then going 5 rounds, either echoing what he sees. Sometimes you see something on Fox and he says, "I'm going to send the feds into Chicago," or Chelsea Manning betrayed Obama because he sees it on the Chiron on TV and then he tweets it right out. Or sometimes he wants to go 5 rounds with what he sees on TV, calling CNN's polls fake news because they're not favorable to him. And I think there is an attitude on cable TV which is to mix it up with Trump, defend their integrity, call Trump on what is factually flawed, and stand up for themselves, which is totally understandable. And I don't want to disparage fact checking, even if it doesn't sway a single voter. I think those things need to be done for the record. But I do think that if I was a cable TV news producer, I would want to think about, wait a second, I got a captive audience of 1 here. I know he's watching. What can I feed him to help shape his worldview? I mean, in that Thrush Haberman piece, they note, he is less connected to the people now that he's in the White House than he was during the campaign. I'm not even that convinced he was that connected during the campaign. He didn't do a lot of town halls. He doesn't do a lot of glad handling. It's still a lot of speeches. But I mean, everyone talks about the White House being a bubble, and possibly is more so for him than anybody else. And his choice of dealing with it is to watch cable news. That's how he is, in his mind, he's staying connected to what's going on in the world. So you could be, and I gave out some examples. You could be talking about, young beauty queens who want their Obamacare. That would get his attention. You know he'd watch. And we know he has a soft spot in healthcare. He used to be a single payer guy. That could potentially sway.
Well, I think this would be good ratings.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. This is good for everybody. You could be talking about. I mean, he's very focused on layoffs in. Rust Belt states, big manly cars and air conditioners and whatnot. There's layoffs right now happening for American Apparel in Los Angeles. This is clothes manufacturing. They're not white working class people in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania, but it's a lot of Latinos in Southern California. But it's still jobs. It still affects the American economy. These are jobs that.
He loves the Latinos.
He wants to get these. He wants to say that he is looking out for people who are not white. He could be also taking the lead on criminal justice reform. There's been some nascent bipartisan coalition building around that. Do a few cable news segments about how there are people languishing in jail for excessive sentences, and that there are both evangelical Christians and African American civil rights activists who are coming together and trying to help these people. That could affect his thinking too. I mean, so there's all sorts of ways we could be. He's definitely influenced by TV, and we know he likes fights, so he's easy to bait. But you could be trying to soften him up too if you do it the right way.
Well, my colleague Jamie Weinstein has this theory that instead of this, by the way, perfect tie-in to our last conversation. Instead of protesting and holding rallies and all that stuff, if you really want to make a difference, run ads, basically showing the picture of Steve Bannon on the cover of Time magazine, and it could be like, call President Bannon, ask him, basically. If you were to run that on Morning Joe, Don Lemon, whatever shows he's watching, that might, like, the money you would spend on running that ad, building up Bannon as the real president, that actually might have more of an impact in bringing change than any sort of protesting or whatever that you could do. Because he does we do know that he watches these shows.
I mean, we know he watches. We know he's thin-skinned. We know he wants to be seen as a strong, masculine person. He's all upset that Sean Spicer got played by a woman, apparently, on Saturday Night Live. It also makes you wish that we didn't have Alec Baldwin doing Trump. If we had a woman doing Trump in the first place, how would that drive him crazy?
It could happen.
But
I have to say, I'm not a Melissa McCarthy fan. I'm much more,
You're an Amy Schumer fan, or Lena Dunham. That's where you go.
Much more a Jenny McCarthy fan, but but no, I am impressed with how good of a job she did in that role. That was
this is definitely. SNL is has long been a very male dominated show. And I think that the tables have been turned there, and people really when I was a kid, people would talk about how women couldn't be funny, and no one says it anymore. No one would dare make the argument that women can't be funny.
Adam Carolla might still
he's an idiot. He's not watching what is going on in the comedy industry right now because.
No, and let me I know you're in a rush, but I will attempt to make his argument very succinctly. It's not that there are certainly women who are funnier than me, but I think what he's saying is, generally speaking, on average, men tend to be funnier. And I would argue, and I think he would argue this too, it's because it's a way we get attract women. Like if you're a nerdy kid, you're not the quarterback, then being funny, like most of what men do is to like, this is all very private.
Well, I mean, but this is all
very politically incorrect.
I think there was a notion, years ago that if women try to be funny, that men would be put off by it. And I don't know anyone who says I don't want my woman making jokes anymore, trying to make fun of me or whatever. No. I mean, maybe I'm sure in some corners of society that's still true, but I think more and more people like women being funny as much as they like men being funny, and we're saying that they plenty of people have the chops to do it. They're doing it on SNL and doing it in other movies, and Tina Fey, Leslie Jones, Wanda Sykes. You can go on and on. There are plenty of people out there who clearly show they can be funny.
They're funny. I'm just saying, maybe not as funny. You're
going to get yourself into trouble, sir.
That's sad. Well, let's stop before then. You know who's funny? Tina Fey and Alec Baldwin together on 30 Rock. I think on that we can agree. All right, another politically incorrect and possibly suicidal episode of the DMZ. Send your angry tweets about female comedians to @DMZ Show or
not to me.
Share.
Don't send them to me. I have nothing to do with this.
Bill, quit saying that. All right, another great show. We'll see you all next week here
Take care.
in the DMZ. Thanks, Bill.